Hi everyone, I'm Chef Susie with Escoffier Online. Welcome to our live session this morning. Today we're going to be exploring some cutout leaf cookies. We're going to be decorating them, making a few different shapes and sizes, using a few different techniques. Super easy to make with the fall season here. The leaves are starting to turn, they're in swing here in our area, and it's just a super colorful time of year, and it's a great time to start exploring some of these leaf cookies. The colors are nice and bright. We're going to be using some orange, red, yellow, a little bit of green, a little bit of chocolate. So knowing that, let's go ahead and get started. Okay, so for the dough, we're not going to make the cookie dough today. We're just going to be talking about it. So I just made a basic shortbread dough. And what I did is I took some flour. I did a blend of bread flour and all-purpose flour, bread flour and cake flour, and I mixed that with a little bit of salt, a little bit of granulated sugar, and then I cut in some butter. Once it was crumbly, kind of a mealy, coarse cornmeal texture, I went ahead and I added some egg yolks, a little bit of vanilla, and the dough is done. Super easy to make. You can chill this a little bit and then you won't have any sticking or cracking, but it's just a basic shortbread dough. What's nice for cutout cookies, you can use your favorite dough. What would be pretty neat with this is to put some chocolate chips in here this time of year. And also I'm thinking too, you could even have a little bit of fun with it and put some sprinkles or some nonpareils. We're going to be covering these with icing, and some of them are going to color the dough. But I think with the cookies that you're covering with icing, it would be nice to have a little mini chocolate chip or a little sprinkle in there just for something different, something a little bit more colorful. So let's go ahead and roll this out, and we're going to make some leaf cookies, and then we'll go ahead and we'll talk about the icing. We're going to be making a basic royal icing, so we'll talk about that in a little bit. And please let me know if you have any questions. Okay, so for your dough, you don't want this to be too cold because it's going to crack on you when you roll it. So you want it to be bendable. A little too warm, then it's going to stick. So just be mindful that you've got enough flour on here, not too much. So we're going to go ahead and do some cutout cookies here. Okay. So we're just going to be putting these on a baking sheet that I have lined with some parchment. And super easy to do. I've got some different leaf cutters. Let's go ahead and make a little room here. Okay, so this time of year you can find a lot of these cutters as well. So it's a fun time of year. I've got a large one here. I picked up a couple of smaller ones. This is kind of a maple leaf. If you have any Canadians, nice red maple leaf. And just a few other leaves. There's a variety of shapes and sizes out there, so definitely have fun with these. Let me know if you need any help locating cookie cutters, and I'll steer you in the right direction. Okay, so please let me know if you have any questions. So we're just going to do some basic cutouts, and these are going to be for some of these cookies that we are going to be decorating with the royal icing. So this dough in particular would be nice to maybe put some sprinkles, a little bit of color, maybe a few mini chocolate chips or some chopped up chocolate in there. And please let me know if you have any questions. Some of these have little, like almost little stems on the bottom. So if you're having any sticking, you'll want to, maybe you can dip this in a little bit of flour before you actually cut out your cookie. And did we have a question? Nope, not yet. Okay. All right, that's fine. Okay, do a few maple leaves. And then, I guess I could roll out a little bit more dough for that large cookie. And okay, so this is dough. You can reuse it, I would say, once, but be careful that you're just doing something like this. You're pressing it together, and don't be kneading it. You don't want to work this too much. Okay, so for the leaves, as we know, leaves always have a little bit of veining on them. So I just have an artificial leaf, and I'm just going to be pressing this into the cookie, and we're just going to get some nice veining on here. So you don't have to worry about it being, too perfect, because, our leaves in nature are not. Okay, these are going to get baked at about 375 until they turn a nice golden brown color. Okay, so I'm not going to be putting the stem marks on all of these, because some of these we are just going to be baking plain, and we are going to be icing them with some royal icing. Okay, so what you can do with some of these plainer cookies that you put a little bit of the leaf marking on, you can just put a little bit of cinnamon sugar, and this will just be a little bit more of a variety with the cookies. And when these bake, you're going to be able to see that stemming as well. So please let me know if you have any questions. And we'll go ahead and roll out a couple of these big ones, and then we'll be setting these aside. Okay, and as you can see, the dough is it's not too firm, so it's not cracking it all on me. Okay. I like this nice big cookie cutter because you can really kind of have a lot of fun when you're decorating a bigger cookie as opposed to these smaller ones. Oh, we have a question. All right. The question is on the icing. We are just going to make a very basic royal icing with some powdered sugar and some egg whites. And then we are going to do some piping around the cookie, and then we'll do the flood for the inside of the cookie. Okay, so these are some nice big ones. We have a super nice variety here. Let's go ahead and move these around. These are not going to spread much at all. You want to allow them some room for a little bit of spread, but this isn't going to spread. These are holding their shapes as cutout cookies. They're not going to spread as much as chocolate chip or oatmeal raisin cookies. Okay, so like I said, we are going to use this dough. Again, I'm gently pressing it together. Careful, not too much flour. What I like to do usually with my used dough is I'll take a piece of my new dough, and I'll kind of put them together. I'll put a little new dough with a little used dough, and that's a good way to use that up. So you can chill that and go ahead and roll it out again. Okay, so I might have to put some gloves on here for this one. I don't want to get colors on my hands. Okay, so I made some colored dough. I just did some red, orange, yellow, and chocolate. Just added some food coloring to this dough. I was careful not to mix it too much. And for the chocolate, I just put a little bit of cocoa powder. So what you're going to do is you can kind of put these together, and it does not have to be in any special way at all. So I put some gloves on so I don't get coloring everywhere. Oftentimes when I'm working with coloring in dough or even with fondant, I'll wear gloves, and then this way I don't get coloring everywhere. So what I did is I'm just kind of pressing this together, so I have a nice swirl of color. Okay, you could even put a little bit of green in here as well. Green is a nice fall color because the leaves on the trees are sometimes, still a little bit green, while you have some turning leaves as well. So this is kind of fun. You can do a lot with this technique with the different colors. So we're just going to roll this out, and then we're going to be just cutting these. So you have some nice swirling. With this one in particular, be careful that you're not putting too much flour on here. You can use a pastry brush to brush it off, but you don't want to really mute that color at all. And I kind of, pick and choose a little bit to make sure I get all of the colors in. I got a little bit of dough stuck in there. So there you go. Those are super pretty. Like I said, I kind of go around a little bit and pick a little bit of swirling here and there, and everywhere. Okay, and let me know if you have any questions at all. Maybe we'll cut one of those big ones. Okay, so we are done with the cookie dough. Any questions on the cookie dough? Okay. So we have a nice big cookie here, a couple of our little ones, and we'll just get them on the tray. I can kind of distribute them a little bit before I actually bake these. Okay, remember these are going in at 350, and probably about 12 minutes. Just keep an eye on them. When they start turning a little bit golden brown around the edges, then they are done. This scrap, just be careful and you can roll it again. You don't want to mix it up too much because it's really just going to turn like a brown, not a nice brown color. Okay, so do we have any questions so far? Okay, so with cookie making, you always have a lot of things around. Okay, so let's go ahead and work on our royal icing. So what you're going to do is you're just going to mix some powdered sugar, a little bit of cream of tartar, and a little bit of egg white, and that's going to be your royal icing. So I've got some powdered sugar in my mixer. I've got the whip attachment, and we are going to go ahead and add a little bit of egg white. So what you're looking for is you want a pasty, like a toothpastey consistency before you start whipping this. So typically you'll use about 1 pound of powdered sugar and about half of a cup of egg white. But what I like to do is add just a little bit at a time. You can always add more, but it's harder to take it out. You could always add a little bit of powdered sugar. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and whip this. Coming together nicely. Let's go ahead and scrape it down a little bit, and we'll see if it's a good consistency where we're actually going to keep whipping it. And please let me know if you have any questions. Okay. It's a little soft, so I'm going to go ahead and add a little bit of powdered sugar. Thicken it up a little bit. Then we're going to whip it, and it's going to be almost like that toothpaste consistency that I mentioned. Okay, so this is perfect. So we're going to scrape it down. We're going to go ahead and whip this up. Okay. So that's going to be whipping for a few minutes until it's nicely aerated. It's going to be almost, like I said, like a toothpaste consistency. And you'll see different recipes for the royal icing. You'll see some that have some meringue powder. Some of them are going to have a little bit of corn syrup in them too, which is going to make the icing nice and shiny. And you can even, some chefs even do this icing with a little bit of powdered sugar and warm water. If you want to stay away from the eggs, that's fine too. It's not going to whip up like this, but you can definitely make a thick icing with a little bit of powdered sugar and water. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to color this when it comes out. And just about done. You want to fluff up a little bit. Like I said, it's going to resemble toothpaste a little bit. Just remember that. Okay, so it's really getting a nice fluff on it. And it looks perfect. Okay, so what we're going to do, so we have this nice thick royal icing. This is exactly how we want it to look. So what we're going to do is we're going to color this. We're just going to make 2 colors, make it a little simple. And then we're going to do our outline for our cookie. And we're just going to do a little bit here. So this is the thickness that we're going to use for the outline of the cookie. Then what we're going to do is we're going to make the flood, which is the inside of the cookie. So I'm just using some basic coloring that I got at the grocery store. You could use a liquid paste coloring, and that's going to be a little bit more condensed. You're going to use a little bit less, but this is fine as well. Okay, so we've got a few spoons here. I'm going to make a little bit of yellow. And like I said, those liquid paste colors, you're definitely going to use less. So for the fall, I like to make these pretty bright. And this is what we're going to use to outline our cookie. And then we're going to thin it down a little bit to make the flood. And please let me know if you have any questions. We're going to go ahead and put just a little bit more. Like I said, with these liquid colors, you're going to be using more than you would with the paste, but they're readily available at your grocery store. You don't have to go anywhere to find them. Okay. So red, of course, always takes a little bit more. So kind of go a little extra with the red. Okay. With the red, since we're putting a little extra, we might have to put a little bit more powdered sugar, but I think it's going to be okay. And we have a question.
Is there a rule of thumb for what type of icing you should use with different baked goods?
The question is there a rule of thumb about what different icings you should use with baked goods? Well, with these cookies in particular, these decorated cutout cookies, you want to use an icing like this, like the royal icing, or as I mentioned, the powdered sugar and water icing. And this way, these are they're gonna harden. And you can use a buttercream, but keep in mind it's not going to get hard, and you definitely won't be able to stack the cookies. We're just going to put a little bit more red in here. Could easily make orange with this too, but I've already got an orange cookie. So I think the red is looking good. And please let me know if you have any questions. Okay, so what we're going to do is we are going to work on the lining. The question is what do you use to thin this out for the flood? I'm just going to use a little bit of water. Okay, so I've got a pony roll here, which is a paper roll that I like to make a cone with. You can do your parchment triangle, but oftentimes you're going to see this in pastry kitchens. And what you do is you just tear off a piece, and then you go ahead and you fill your bag. I'm not going to be using any tips, I'm just going to be cutting my bag. And please let me know if you have any questions. So this was super easy to make. And just using a simple paper bag, we're going to cut the end. And let's go ahead and make one with the red. And then we are going to make the flood that I'm talking about. Okay, so like I said, please let me know if you have any questions. So this is super easy to make. We're going to go ahead and type this on the cookies. And let's go ahead and make the flood. So I've got some warm water. And what we're going to do is we're going to thin this down. And this is what we are going to fill the cookie in with. Be careful not to put too much. You don't want to thin this down too much. And we have a question. What kind of paper? What the question is what kind of paper was I using? It's a pony roll, which is something that you will see oftentimes in a pastry kitchen. It's a type of parchment, but you can't bake on that parchment. It's going to stick if you bake on it, and it's pretty much just for, you know, making pastry bags and things like that. And it's handy to have in the kitchen. You can use the parchment triangles, but pony roll definitely goes a lot faster. Okay, so this is our consistency of our icing for the flood. This is what you're looking for. What you're going to do is see when you hold it up and it drizzles down, it's not leaving any marks. It's nice and flat, and that's exactly what you're looking for. And make sure that you have plenty of towels on hand. Okay, so for the icing for the flood, you can fill a paper bag, or if you have squirt bottles, you can use that as well. So we're going to go ahead and fill our bag for the flood. And in a couple minutes here, we're going to start finishing off our cookies with some piping. Okay, this one I'm kind of cutting the end off a little bit. And I'm just going to go ahead and carefully pour this icing in. So I'm just making a few cookies today. So when you're making a big batch of these, you're going to have a little bit more icing. And you'll always want to make sure that you have enough coloring on hand. Okay, so these are my bags for the flood. Okay. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and make a little bit of this red color for the flood. And you can make these colors brighter or less bright, whichever you like. And just be careful, a little bit of water at a time. You can always add a little bit more, but it gets a little rough when you've got too much and you actually have to start adding some more powdered sugar because you could get some lumping there. Okay, so please let me know if you have any questions. Okay, so this is the perfect consistency. Just want to make sure we get out our lumps. We'll go ahead and we'll make another cone with the pony roll, and then we will be all set. And like I said, if you have some squeeze bottles, these are perfect for the floods, but I'm just using what I have. And we're kind of making do with what we have here. Okay. And like I said, if you can't have eggs, you can use a powdered sugar, warm water mixture, and just kind of do the same. It's not going to whip up like the royal icing would, but you can definitely make an icing that is thick enough for the outline, and you can thin it enough for the flood. Okay, so another nice color for the fall season is the chocolate. So I've got a little bit of chocolate that I melted here. This is just some almond bark that I'm using today. So it's handy, it sets up nicely, and you don't have to temper it at all. So I just melted this, so we're going to go ahead and get a bag ready, and we'll do some piping with the chocolate as well. Okay. Oh, our pony roll has a little bit of static on it today. A little stuck. Okay, so everyone is very quiet. Do we have any questions on the leaf cookies? Because we are going to go ahead and start having a little bit of fun and decorating the cookies. Okay, so now we've got some chocolate in the mix too, which is a nice addition to the fall colors. Okay. We'll go ahead and cut this bag a little bit. All right. So let's go ahead and we'll grab the cookies that I baked earlier, and we'll take a look at those. Okay. So I've got some cookies that I baked earlier, and as you can see, I have a few different kinds here. Okay, so we have the maple leaves where I put the cinnamon sugar. We've got some plain cookies that we're going to go ahead and decorate. And then we have the cookies where we use the colored dough. So these baked up nicely. These you're going to want to make sure that you're not letting them get too brown in the oven. And you can make your colors a little bit brighter. Like I said, you could add a little bit of green in the mix. That's always a nice idea. So let's go ahead and we're going to make a few of these cookies. Okay, so as I was talking about, we're going to do some outlining first. Okay, I'm just cutting my bag. You can use a small tip, that works fine too. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to outline this cookie. This is just a very typical technique. I have my bag is going a little bit of crooked. That happens with paper sometimes. So go ahead and clean that up a little bit. Okay. So let's go ahead and we're going to do our outline here. It's going to go around the outside of the cookie. And we're going to leave this sit for a little bit. If you have time, you could let it dry for a few hours, but if not, it's going to dry while we're working here. So let's go ahead and make a couple more of these. We're going to outline them. Okay. And you're going to be flooding this cookie. So you're going to be flooding it with the same color. So if your lines aren't perfect, don't worry about that. You're the only one that's going to notice it. So this is the rim that's going to hold the icing that we're going to pour on the inside. And like I said, you can leave these dry for the day, or you can let them dry a little bit like we're going to do when we're working here. Okay, and please let me know if you have any questions. So we're going to go ahead and do a little bit of red. Same technique. I'm going to cut the end a little bit. And we're going to do our maple leaf cookie. So it's holding its shape nicely. Okay. Okay, so we will flood these in just a minute, but let's go ahead and explore some of the cookies that I made earlier, and then we'll do the flood on these cookies that we just made. Okay, so one thing that you want to be sure of is after you do the flood, before you do any decorating at all on the cookie, that it's completely set. It's just going to be a lot easier for you. Okay, so these usually take about, this one is a little soft still. They usually take about 6 to 8 hours to firm up, and you can leave them overnight. That is ideal too. So let's go ahead and finish these off. We'll do a little bit of piping. And then we'll go ahead and flood these cookies that we prepared. Okay, so now comes the fun part. So we can do a little bit of piping on the cookies. So what you can do is you can take a little bit of this royal icing, pipe on your cookies. You can do some, of the classic leaf marks. And since the cookie is set, you can do some things like you can pick it up and you could put it in a little bit of sugar. So I've got some green icing sugar. So what you can do is you can pick this up and you can dip it in sugar a little bit. Don't want to do it too much. You don't want to press it down too much, but that's kind of a nice pretty fall look. And let's go ahead and we are going to do a little bit of chocolate piping on the second cookie. And like I said, please let me know if you have any questions. What's fun about these is you can really have a lot of fun and do some swirling. The chocolate is a little bit set here. Okay. What you can do is you can do a little bit of scrolling. Make this one a little bit fancier. So it's really limitless how you can finish these cookies. That's a little bit of a fun look. So let's go ahead and we're going to do, oops. All right, this big one is not quite set. Like I said, I don't want to wait about maybe 6 to 8 hours. So this one, what we'll do is we'll do a nice variety. And we'll do a little bit of the red with this one as well. Okay, so please let me know if you have any questions on the leaf decoration. So let's go ahead and do the flood on the other cookies. What we're going to do is we're going to turn these around so we don't have to move our cookies. And we have a nice variety. So we're going to do the flood on the yellow. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to open up my end a little bit more. So these are already starting to set a little bit, and it's going to hold that icing. So as you can see, for this flood icing, it's going into the corners, and I'm just kind of moving it around. You can move this around with a Q-tip as well. I mean, not a Q-tip, a toothpick, sorry. So it's a nice smooth icing, and it's going to dry just like this. So you don't want it too much because it can run down the sides a little bit. And if it does run down the sides a little bit on you, you can always just trim it off with a little paring knife. So this is the flood that I was talking about, and you can do it in a bag or in a bottle, like I mentioned. So you're just it kind of works on its own a little bit, but you help it out a little bit by getting in some of those air pockets. Let's go ahead and flood the big cookie. I think I have enough icing to finish the cookie. Like I said, I just made enough for a few cookies here. You'll be making a bigger batch. Be mindful with the royal icing, it does dry. So if you're leaving it sit for any amount of time, what you're going to want to do is cover it with a damp towel. Okay, so how's our flood look? Pretty good, huh? And these little imperfections, no one is going to notice them once you start decorating the cookies. So we'll go ahead and we'll flood the red cookies, and we are going to be saying goodbye here soon. So please let me know if you have any questions. It was fun doing leaf cookies with you today, and definitely have a lot of fun with these. And keep in mind, chocolate is nice this time of year too. Instead of making the cookies vanilla flavored, you could make them chocolate by replacing a small amount of the flour in the formula with a little bit of cocoa, powdered cocoa. So what you can do with these too is you can sprinkle a little bit of sugar on these while they are still a little bit wet. You know, maybe on one side I've got some green, and you want to do this while it's wet, and you could put some sprinkles as well. Cinnamon is nice too. Adds a little bit of contrast. You can still do some of the piping over these. Red, super nice as well. And kind of like to put this on just one side. We'll go ahead and put a little bit of orange. And it's kind of like a nice little change up on our cookie color. So please let me know if you have any questions. Like I said, you're going to want to let these dry for a good amount of time. Okay, so before we go, let's go ahead and we're going to do one more thing. So there's also, oops, okay. Go ahead and set our cookies aside. Okay, so what you can do too is there's also these great sprays that you can buy at the store. So they're food sprays, and you can spray a little bit of this on your cookie as well. So what I usually do is just to kind of get the hang of it, I'll spray a little bit in my sink first. And then I can just wash it away. So let's go ahead and spray a little bit of this on the cookie, and it's going to give it a nice color. And this has alcohol in it, I can smell it, so it's going to dry pretty quickly, but make sure your cookies dry all the way before you actually do this. So this is a nice effect for the cookie. A little bit of color enhancement on one side. So thanks so much for joining me today, and we'll see you next time. Goodbye.